Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, we'll be covering a few different things. We'll be covering the Bakhmut front, a short video from Avdiivka, and some things about the missile strikes in Kiev. So a few nights ago, the Russian forces launched a large missile strike on Kiev, and what has been the talk of the town is that a Patriot system may or may not have been hit. So according to a pro-Ukrainian source, I don't know which source it is, but this was essentially hearsay, but it makes sense, so I will come and report on it anyways. Essentially what they say is that in the video we see missile strikes, the Patriot system launching about 30 missiles, which is essentially all that they have. I think they have 32. And then they explained that the reason they launched all of these missiles was not to shoot down the Russian missiles, but because they already estimated that the Russian missile will actually hit the Patriot system, so they didn't have time to go away. So their only solution was to shoot all of their missiles to prevent the explosion from being larger than it would be if the missiles had also been hit by the Russian missile. So essentially, launching all of the missiles before the Russian strike hits so that the explosion gets limited in comparison. And that is that about the missile strikes in the Patriot system. Then we see about the Bakhmut front, we see that the Russian forces actually struck this bridge here between Yar and Bakhmut. So this is actually very interesting because we see here with localization by Chris and the video of the strike. We see that they did this with a precise artillery strike, and it's not because they haven't been able to do this before, as they have actually been closer to that location earlier compared to now. In comparison, they were and had control over the road here to the south of Yar, and they also were closer here into the northeast. So it is because they actively chose not to destroy the bridge. And the reasoning I come up with to argue for this decision is Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which, by the way, every Russian officer has to read. So it is actually very well incorporated into the Russian strategies. So Sun Tzu, The Art of War states that if the enemy is crossing a river, you do not destroy the bridge until after half of the army has crossed over. And that is because you want to attack a fragment of the enemy power, not the whole power at once. This makes it easier as it gives you a numerical advantage. So essentially they have been leaving the bridges and crossings open as they wanted the Ukrainian forces to cross, and now they do not want them to cross, which means that they want to take the city. So we're closing in on the endgame of Bakhmut. And as I mentioned in my earlier video, I estimate that the Russian forces will capture Bakhmut latest by Sunday. And if that is true, you have to subscribe because then I'm accurate. Then we have this video of Bakhmut itself. We see all of this heavy destruction through the whole area. The video starts here in the perspective of the citadel area, and then it goes counterclockwise. And we see this utter destruction over this whole area, including the citadel area, but specifically the residential area, where most buildings are just complete rubble. Then we also see here in this map here by Warmapper. He has created this map looking over the territorial changes from the 16th of May 2022 until today. And we see how the Russian forces have only focused offensive operations around Bakhmut, while the Ukrainian forces have started their Kherson counteroffensive and finished that, and they started their Kharkiv offensive and they finished that. So essentially we see that the Ukrainian forces have launched two major offensives since May 16th, 2022, and the Russians have essentially just fought by Bakhmut. And that is mainly done by Wagner, especially since the fall of last year. So what does this mean? This means that the Russian capability, their offensive capabilities, are largely untouched. They haven't been used. This means that they are waiting and preparing for the Ukrainian offensive, after which we see the largest buildup of forces in Europe clash in 2023 here in the Ukraine war. It's going to be a very interesting fight, as both sides have been building up their forces for months. The Ukrainians with their large leverages of weapons deliveries from the West, and all of these troops being trained by them, and all of their mobilizations, and the Russian forces with their partial mobilization and all of their modernization of their weapons, their development of glide bombs, and the intensive use of air force compared to the start of the war. So essentially what we're seeing is that both sides have become much stronger forces, and now we see that they are going to clash very, very soon, in a couple of weeks at the very least. So we see there's all of these changes happening to the front line, but the focus right now is this small city in the middle of the Donbass region, Bakhmut. And we see that it is very close to being captured by the Russian forces, as we hear from Remy Lind with his latest update that the Wagner forces are preparing for a final strike in Bakhmut. This last night, they have started a very large operation where they essentially go all out in storming the last area of the Citadel area. And what area specifically? They have split the Citadel area into 3 parts, and they all have their own code name. This one to the northeast is the nest, this one to the northwest is the construction area, and then this final one is the domino area. So essentially what we hear is that these two have been captured, and then the fighting continues here in the domino area. However, the Russian forces are already very active within the domino area, according to Remy, and then this night they started storming it. We haven't heard the results of this so far, but according to Remy, they were putting everything in it, and they want to completely destroy the Ukrainian army fighting in the Citadel area. At the same time, they're also attacking in the northwestern residential area, trying to capture the rest of it, specifically the Bakhmut Children's Hospital, and also in the southwest, trying to capture the last part of the residential area, as well as this hangar area that the Ukrainian forces are using to evacuate the southwestern part. So essentially what we're seeing is that there is the final battle of the Citadel area ongoing, and we're very close to the end of the battle. We see here to the west of Bakhmut, this whole area here is an open field with 2 roads going in and out of the city. So this is actually very interesting, because if the Russian forces manage to push out the Ukrainian forces, then they would have to retreat across an open field or through the roads. So if they go through the roads, then they would be very concentrated and easy pickings for the Russian artillery. If they spread out across the field, then they will still be easy to pick up, they will be easy to detect, especially with the Russian drones, and then they will still be easy targets for the Russian artillery. So essentially any retreat is very difficult, as they'll be shot down by Russian artillery, and at the same time, if they just keep staying and fighting, then they will eventually have to either give up or die to the Russian onslaught. So the fighting here is very heavy, and we are closing in on the final battles of the city. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.